And I know it's like, well, I have the rest of my life to do whatever. Like, now's the
Mm-hmm.
time for me to learn new things, and it's worth the experience. And there's a lot of pressure to keep up on social media. But in my generation, people took caffeine pills, and I was scared. First thing is about money. Save as much as you can. You don't have to starve or never have fun, but save more than you spend, or at least save half, and don't think that always that your way is the best way.
Shifting into adulthood can feel like navigating uncharted territory, but it's not something we're meant to do alone. From childhood to our teenage years and well into adulthood, there's one constant that not only remains with us, but also deepens and strengthens over time, which is our faith. INCRadio podcast, we're here to hear. Hello, podcast family, and welcome to episode 9 of our season, Turning Pages. You are tuning in to INCRadio podcast, the podcast that resonates with you. I'm your host, Angelica, and of course, we are not alone on today's podcast episode. We are joined today by a very lovely guest, actually from my very own district in New Jersey. Hi po, Sister Kathleya.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Sister Angelica. I'm Kathleya Fajardo de Guzman, and I am one of the hosts and producers of INC Radio, New Jersey Satellite Studio. You can also see me sometimes on Faith and Melody and sometimes on Chatline as well. So happy to be here on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Bob, for joining today's episode. Really excited, actually, because I really think that you can give us really great insights, especially on this topic. So, our episode topic for today is actually shifting to adulthood. So, in this podcast episode, we will discuss the challenges and the lessons that we've learned when it comes to navigating adulthood. But of course, we want our podcast family to join in on the conversation too. So, let's segue to our podcast episode question for today. As always, for all of our live viewers, please feel free to leave your answer in the live chat. And for those who will be viewing our lovely episode after it has aired, please feel free to still share with us your response to our question at podcast@incradio.net. So, for our podcast episode question, what has been the most surprising challenge you faced in the transition to adulthood, and how did you overcome it? Now, before we head off to our main discussion, we'd like to give our special thanks to Ka Angelo Rano Vimanalo, our CEBSI president and CEO. Most of all, we would like to thank our dearest executive minister, Ka Eduardo Vimanalo. We love you, Paul. Now we are going to start our main discussion, and I think that we want to start off with the conversation with what does adulthood mean to you? Because I think the definition of an adult really changes over time. So, Sister Kathleya, for you, what does adulthood mean to you, and has this definition changed over time?
Well, legally, in the United States, adulthood is the age of 18. But personally, I think as soon as you get your first job, you've already started your journey to adulthood. Even if the job is babysitting at home, anything that pays you outside of your allowance, if you get one, I think that really starts the journey of adulthood.
Me, when I think of adulthood, Bo, just because I am not that far into my adulthood, I'm only 2 years in. I've actually had this conversation with a lot of other people as well, where I feel like 18 is too young to be considered an adult, especially here in the States, because there's a lot of responsibilities or things that we need to be a certain age to do. Let's just say something as simple as renting a car. I think
Yes, you have
it's
to be 25.
Yes, and that's kind of one of the things that really confuses me and also other people that are close to my age because you're considered an adult, but there's certain things that you still can't do. So I've always thought that it should be older, but legally here it is 18. But I think the definition of an adult for me it's changing in a way where I'm starting to associate the definition more with responsibilities.
Well, you know what's funny? In other parts of the world, kids get shipped off to boarding school as early as 7. So they are independent people by the time they're
Mm-hmm.
12. They know how to manage their finances by the time
Mm-hmm.
they're in high school. Something that I didn't grow up with because I grew up at home. So, but in terms of if you're thinking of adulting, which you start doing at a younger than 18, making good choices, things that are better for your future and making huge mistakes, that definitely starts before you're 18. So and with social media, I think it's also harder. It's also harder for your generation, because I'm much older than you, to feel prepared for the future. Although I think your generation is so tech savvy, it's like you guys always have an answer to everything.
I think it just goes both ways, Paul, because technology and social media gives us so much access to information. And I think that's the plus in it, because we're getting the information that we might be looking for that will help us to really be responsible or independent. And it's the simple things. Recently, I've been getting into cooking. For me, that's a level up in my
It's
adulthood.
awesome.
Um, so it's the little things like being able to use social media to search for easy recipes or budget friendly recipes. So it's the little things. I think in a way social media can also be helpful.
Absolutely. But in terms of preparing you for adulthood, I think also makes you think about things that you don't need to worry about. Like fashion things. You don't need all those clothes, especially if you don't have a job.
Right, all right. Because I think that there's that pressure sometimes to grow up right away, which leads us to our next question. When did you feel the pressure or start to feel the pressure or expectation to grow up, and what was that experience like?
The first responsibility I ever had, I was very young. You had to wash the dishes, so that starts you on your journey. But the actual pressure, expectation to grow up was in high school, trying to figure out what you were going to do for college, where you were going to go, and then this pressure of having or trying to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life for your career. I think that was when it really started. And then, of course, once you got to college and things were not what you expected, things did not go the way you expected, and also, just lifestyle changes, growing apart from friends. I think that's really the teen years, and then going to college. That was, I think, the first big adult decision that I had to make. Besides, I started working a part-time job after school, retail, at the age of
Mhm.
14. So I kind of knew some things about money, not the best at it, but having to decide, and dealing with, moving out, being on my own, being in charge of my schedule, no one monitoring me, definitely 17, 18, and then college, of course.
For you, do you think that that experience was exciting? Was it something that you were scared of at first? How did it feel going through those different stages and like feeling the need to grow up?
Well, I had two older brothers who were already in college, so I could already see the transitions and the lifestyle changes that were happening at home, because they were living from home and commuting to school, whereas I was the other way, moving out and then working and going to school at the same time. So it was exciting. It's exciting to feel independent. It's exciting to
Hmm.
be in charge of what's going to happen. It's exciting to come back to where you live and everything's exactly the way you left it. And sometimes that's a bad thing too, because if you didn't clean up, it's still a mess when you come back home. But it's also nice that everything is exactly where you left it. Your bed's the same way,
Hmm.
so that's exciting, and everything is your own. So if you didn't have it or you forgot to buy it, you had to do without. There was no backup plan. There was no going, hey, mom, dad, could you run to the, or call someone to pick something up for you? There's no one to bail you out. So in a way, that was also exciting. It's like, oh, so this is what it's like. This is independence. But it was also lonely. If you grow up in a big family and it's just quiet, or you live with people who don't have the same upbringing as you, same background, you have maybe one thing in common, and that's you go to the same school. That's your
Hmm.
only, and you speak English, maybe. I had some foreign students in my suite. So yeah, so it was challenging, but it was also exciting. Anything new, I think, is exciting. I always try to look at something new as exciting, even though I may feel stress, I may feel pressure, I may feel nervous about it.
Hmm.
It's still exciting. Anything new is exciting.
And I think that the exciting part about maybe having that independence, or really feeling like you're growing up, or you're going through, you're doing adulting, right? I think the excitement is also stemming from having the opportunity to witness yourself grow. So you know that you're learning all these lessons, and there's maybe, like, let's just say, learning all these new skills and watching yourself grow. Like for me, this might be really terrible, but I actually did not know how to do my own laundry until this year. Um,
Congratulations. It is a skill. I do have I am getting flashbacks of having to use the washer dryer in the dorms, and
mhm,
someone just taking
mhm.
like a whole container of detergent and just going like this.
I There's actually a pretty big reason why I never knew how to. It's just because um, living in an apartment, my parents always took care of it because it was not like in the apartment itself, so we'd have to go out to do laundry.
Yeah.
And when I moved out this summer, for my internship, I was living on my own. And so I'm not gonna bring all my dirty laundry and drive like an hour and a half back home. Just, I had to figure it out on my own.
But a lot of people do. That's one of the reasons why
Yes.
college students go back home is so that they can do laundry at mom's house. And it's also expensive. If you don't have a washer dryer in your apartment that comes with it,
Mm-hmm.
it's very expensive when you
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to do those things, because it definitely is a skill. And if you can do it regularly and also fold your clothes and then put them away, definitely an adult skill, because I still don't pair my socks. It's atrocious. I think it's a waste of time. So I just buy the same
Actually,
pair of socks.
for me, I actually bought socks recently, or because now that I am living on my own, sometimes I need to have like two of everything, just so that way I don't have to keep bringing everything back to my house and then back to my dorm. I only have white socks,
That's very
and
smart.
they're all the same, so I I still do pair them.
No,
But
that's very smart. No, decision fatigue is a real thing, and it happens. And I mean, it is. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to manage. But honestly, matching socks is, especially now that we're going into the winter season, no one's going to
mhm.
socks.
So beyond learning about how to clean, which is very important in adulthood, are there any other milestones or maybe experiences that you feel like made you feel like you're really an adult?
One of the things that I realized when I was living on my own, whether I was living on campus or off campus, is grocery shopping and how much time cooking really takes. I felt like there was one semester where I felt like I was cooking the entire semester because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to take out a meal plan at the cafeteria because I wanted to save some money. So, but then I realized I didn't know how to batch cook yet. So I was cooking every day, every meal, and like I was exhausted, and then I was worried about school, and I had to go to class. I had evening classes, and I was working during the day. So definitely being hungry because you didn't cook or you didn't buy the right items or you forgot to defrost the food.
That's the
That's
worst. That's the worst. I'm experiencing that now. So I try to think ahead. Actually, with budgeting, even with getting groceries, I try to think ahead, or at least in my head, think of what I'm gonna be cooking for what day. And I
yes,
don't always cook every day because it is time consuming. And for me, it's like the whole day I'll have classes, because I usually, my schedule is usually pretty heavy with classes. And so I don't always have free evenings.
yeah.
So what I try to at least do is work with whatever ingredients I already have. I try to make something out of it, or I'll cook one day and I will kind of divide it so that way it lasts. Let's just say the
See,
next day.
that's smart. So there was that when I was growing up, there was no social media. So you really had to figure it out on your own. There was no one giving you tips.
Meal prepping is really good if you want to save money, Bo. So
Absolutely. But there was no trend for that. No one talked about meal prepping when I was growing up because there was no social media. I mean, the internet was there. It was very new, but there was social media wasn't that popular, and there definitely wasn't like tutorials and things. The tutorial was your parents or your roommates or your classmates. There
Or
was
just
no
figuring it out on your
right, or watching a
own.
movie, or you saw it in a movie, or you saw it in a TV show, but that was it.
I feel that there were other classes because now a lot of the times they've removed those classes like cooking classes.
Junior high school, I learned how to sew, knit, make how to make pasta. I learned how to I also went to woodworking workshop.
We don't have any of those classes, and that's actually what I feel like we should have, those essential life skills. We kind of got to learn it on our own. It's not like in our curriculum now, especially.
But in this current time, in this generation, your generation, even if you learned it, you don't have time to do it.
I think it's because it's also very fast paced
It
in the
is. It
States.
is.
I feel that all the time where I feel like I'm constantly running out of time. So I really have, when it comes to my schedule, I really have to make sure that I give whatever it is the time that I can give it, and then just focusing on, what I should prioritize
Yeah,
versus
no,
what
absolutely.
can wait.
You're as a student, your priority is to study. So trying to plan ahead and set yourself up so that you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat. I mean, it's hard to study when you're hungry. And it's also hard to be healthy if
Mm.
you're just eating ultra processed foods all the time, which is also the other option. So it's good that you're planning ahead. I didn't have that skill. Like I didn't watch movies. There again, social media is a great learning
Mm.
tool because you see what other people are going through who went to your school, who lived in your dorm, who took your professors.
Right.
There's so much research you can do. When I went to college, you just had to show up and figure it out where the buildings were. I just got a map and just go there, and that's it.
Mhm. Nowadays, you could even use maps on your phone, even to
Right.
find the buildings. I still have my car on campus. I actually didn't really know where the parking lots were, but I just set it up on maps and I just walked and I found out
Yeah.
where it was.
No, my time, you had to drive around, walk around, you had
Mhm.
to ask people for directions and trust that they were putting you in the right way.
And just talking about this, I think that of course there are conveniences that social media, especially for our generation, because we're learning a lot. We have access to a lot of information. But even then, I think there are still some challenges that come with entering adulthood, especially when it comes to managing maybe things like finance or like balancing work life. What are some early challenges that you personally experienced, and maybe how did you um, kind of overcome those challenges?
So, living on your own is expensive. If you don't have a lot of money, if you don't have a big allowance, a lot of college students get into credit card debt. So financially, you should try. And I know it's like, well, I have the rest of my life to do whatever. Like, now's the
Mm,
time for me to learn new things and it's worth the experience. And there's a lot of pressure to keep up on social media, but those things usually require a lot of money. So I would say learning how the credit card works was there was no education for it. I think your generation is more educated on credit cards and interest rates and
hmm.
loans for school, loans for
Loans
cars.
for sure.
Yeah, and insurance, like insurance for cars, health insurance. I mean, you're probably still under your parents' health insurance, so that's good. But trying to figure out how to pay all of this off on time. Okay, so back then there were no banking apps. You had to
Hmm.
write a check. You had to use the mail. You had to get some stamps. You had to have an envelope. So everything in this generation is more convenient, but don't forget to do it. No one ever talked about the importance of having a good credit score or a credit history, credit, yeah, that you didn't know, but you, as your generation, should be aware that what you're doing now to yourself affects your future. Affects whether or not you can get a good mortgage rate, or if you can even be approved for a mortgage, or all those other things. So no one ever talked about that. Also, work life balance. Like, you can't just study all the time, right? That's not healthy. That's not healthy. And you can't be sitting. It's not healthy to sit all either. It's a lot of. I actually went to the gym with some friends when I don't know how we did it in between classes. Like one class period, we would all go to the gym and pretend to work out or like, do some
Or at
lifts
least
on
try
your
to,
own.
or
Yeah.
hop on the treadmill.
Right, right, right. It's like, okay, half an hour's done. Time to go. Time to get some fries at the cafeteria. That's what we would do. I also wasn't drinking coffee in college, so that
Oh
was
wow.
also, yeah, exactly. So
I'm so
my
shocked.
my
It was
my life would have been so much different if I drank coffee, because I grew up, my parents saying that coffee is bad for you. Coffee is bad. It is a stimulant, right? But in my generation, people took caffeine pills, and I was scared. And I didn't
oh,
know,
that's really
and
scary.
coffee wasn't that popular. Like coffee is very popular now. Coffee wasn't that popular. It wasn't gourmet.
I actually started drinking coffee when I was a sophomore in high school, and I hated the taste of coffee because I'm not very into bitter things.
Yeah,
So, I didn't enjoy it, but I got used to drinking it because I needed
right.
to drink
Yeah.
it.
So
My schedule was insane sophomore year, but I actually tried to avoid drinking coffee. I only drink it when I really need to stay up. But I think the trend nowadays is matcha.
yeah,
So I drink that more often than I do with coffee.
yeah. I didn't have any of those things. So we I did college without coffee.
So
I don't
how
know if
did you
you can
stay
even imagine.
up?
Willpower, willpower, setting alarms. I had
Mm.
classmates, my roommate, my suite mate, somebody would come and knock on my door, make sure I was up studying.
Oh
I
wow.
had classmates that were in my building that would come and make sure that I was up studying, or we would do study groups. Someone actually one time came to wake me up for an exam because I was running late because I had stayed up the night before. Yeah, someone actually came to
Mm.
my doors and like, is Kathleen here? We have that exam for Far Eastern studies in like 15 minutes. I haven't yet, she hasn't come down yet. We're supposed to, things, we're supposed to meet up and review things. So yeah, imagine life without coffee. That was me in college.
I think the thing with entering adulthood and just being young is you're curious about a lot of things. And so sometimes, especially people from my generation, they might think, oh, like what you said, this is time to experiment and try new things. But it's also important to acknowledge that whatever decisions you're making now also impact your future. So
Agree. Yes.
that's just something to really think about and reflect on, especially when you're making big decisions that could
but i
potentially have big effects on your future.
but I also think that when you spend too much time on social media and whoever you follow says, oh, this is such an awesome experience, and they're doing X, Y, and Z, um, don't believe everything you see. um, they're for every influencer that's pushing something. I mean, especially if they're
Mm.
sponsored, there's probably like 1,000 stories that say, no, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the money. It's not worth the experience. It's not worth the risk of whatever it is that they're promoting. But again, you're right. The novelty of being on your own and choosing is exciting, but don't get carried away.
I think that the times really now are really different, especially because of social media. I think that like what you said, independence is very exciting. But of course, you're going to have to face the reality of adult responsibilities. So how do you think that you could really balance those two?
So I think easing into adulthood, I think easing is not the right word. I think sometimes you're just plunged into it, especially if you're far away, you're going to school far away, or you live
Mhm.
far away. So I think it's best to have your daily to-do list. Make sure you check off those boxes first before you have your fun.
Mhm.
So because the obligations, the things that the must do will never change. So whatever you must do should always come first before whatever fun it is that you want to have. Even if it's just scrolling on social media, even leisure time. Like I know some people think leisure time is going to the gym or taking an exercise class, or even grabbing, like having an extended lunch with your friends. That's leisure time. So make sure that that's the way to do the work life balance. um, you have to make sure that you meet your obligations first, because
Mhm.
there will be sometimes dire consequences, like you forget to show up for work or you're always late for work. you're risking
Mhm.
your job. You need your job because it pays for whatever it is that you need it to pay for.
Mhm.
So, a night out with friends, you can always do that. A quick trip, you can always do that. You can do that. You can schedule things ahead of time. I feel like it's hard to resist that FOMO feeling when, especially when you see your friends doing it, or
Mhm.
maybe everyone's off for the holiday, but you have to work your job. That's that you feel left out and you feel it. But you know what? You should try to find contentment and satisfaction in knowing that you're doing something that's good for your future.
And I always have this mentality that I think is good to have, especially when you want to acknowledge those limits of, you know, having fun, because you can't have fun all the time. Sometimes in adulthood, there's things that we just have to do, um, and so I kind of have this mentality to really push myself to do what I need to get done. Is what would your future self want you to be doing right now? So let's just say I have an exam coming up. Would my future self really be happy if I chose not to prepare my study cards right now? If I chose not to go over the presentation slides that we went over during lecture? And so I kind of think what my future self is going to benefit with. So that's
That's so
really
funny.
important.
I went through a phase where I used to post that on social media because, adults, everyone needs to hear that. Do something that your future self would thank you for. And I never thought of that when I was in college. That phrase never even, I think it was like, for me, it was a checklist. Like my parents, I'm like, okay, this
Hmm.
is what you have to do. And then you go to college and your professor say, this is what you have to do. And then you talk to your career counselor, like, this is what you have to do to get to, this level. And that's what I did. But to be self motivated, no, I just followed the instructions like a chemistry experiment.
I think I had to instill that mentality just because I am a bit of a procrastinator, even when I'm trying
I
not
don't
to.
believe you. I don't believe you. So
No,
you're
I
so
really
highly
am.
accomplished, and all of the work product I've seen you put out is so polished. I find that hard to believe. Like I haven't found a typo yet in all the projects that we've worked on together.
Oh, I think that's just a perfectionist side, but I do feel like I really am a procrastinator. I think it depends if I actually like what I'm doing. I
Okay,
hate
that's
studying.
true.
I hate studying. Whenever I do creative work, I love the creative work I do, so I'm always on it when it's creative. But when it's something that's studying, I'm very not into it. And I've noticed that actually because in business, we do a lot of presentations. I'm not excited to do the research, but I'm excited on decorating the slides.
Oh, well, as long as you find something exciting about what you're doing, because that's what life is like after college. Your job is not always exciting.
Mhm.
And sometimes you don't want it to be because when it means exciting, it means you have to work long hours. But as long as you find the joy in one aspect of what you're doing, you'll be fine and you can continue and you can move on and move forward. So I'm glad that's a skill that a lot of people, don't know how to develop, like finding the joy in one aspect of a task that they don't like that can get them through. So that's a good tip for everyone who's listening and watching. Find the joy in a task that you normally don't enjoy.
I think a really good thing to acknowledge too, which goes along with balancing the excitement of independence with the reality of adult responsibilities, is a kind of seeing everything as a privilege. Whereas for me, let's just say I'm not very excited to study, but it's a privilege to still be able to go to school. And so acknowledging that reality, but also seeing it as a privilege is really what motivates me personally to get the work done because it's also um, it's also pushing me to be grateful for what I have. So then, let's just say working. We're not always excited to go to work, but it's also a privilege to have a job that will help you to sustain your needs. So that type of mentality is also what helps us to kind of balance finding happiness in that and contentment with also, dealing with the responsibilities of it. So,
Angelica, that is a very mature way to look at going to school. I think privilege gets lost in today's I don't want to say today's generation, because it's also something that gets lost in even people my age and older, that it is a privilege to have a job. It is a privilege to go to school and not have to worry about, what you're going to eat today. It's a privilege to have a car that your parents paid for, that they're paying for insurance. And it's a privilege that you get allowance. I'm glad you're bringing up privilege, because I think a lot of us think that these things that we see on social media are necessary. They're not. You don't need branded clothes. Anything that's decent and
Mm,
clean that keeps you warm, that's good enough. And I just want to pause for a second and say, for those who feel like they're not the ones in control of their I guess their college education or their schedules. We have parents for a reason. Uh,
mm,
I think we have to recognize that our parents know our limitations, our capabilities, our weaknesses, and I think we should always try to accept their intentions. Like,
mm,
they have the best intentions for us. It's not to make you miserable. It's not to uh, whatever they're telling you to do or deciding for you or pressuring you to do is not to make you miserable. It's not to ruin your life or ruin your fun, but it's because they know what's ahead and they know you the best. They should have a say in what's happening in your life at this point, as being going into college and being in
mm,
college. So, uh, I hate to say, like, don't fight with your parents, because you will have a conflict of opinion, but be respectful and
mm.
understand their intentions are what's best for your future. Because sometimes we get carried away, don't we? It's new,
Right.
it's fun. Your friends are doing it, so you want to do
Mm.
it too. But maybe there's something else that you have to do.
And I think that brings up a good point as well. Just because you are becoming an adult doesn't mean you can't ask for your parents' help or you can't ask for their advice anymore. Entering adulthood isn't always something that you have to do on your own. You have your friends with you that you can ask for advice. You have your parents, of course. You have maybe role models in your life that you can ask advice from, and so it's not something that you always have to navigate on your own. But I think that actually we're coming to a close with our discussion for today. So before we go off into our Christian value takeaway, I just wanted to ask, is there any piece of advice that you want to give to our viewers today that you have found helpful in navigating your adult life?
First thing is about money. Save as much as you can. You don't have to starve or never have fun, but save more than you spend, or at least save half. You make this much money, save half of it, because you will need it in the future. And secondly, um, just remember that you don't know everything. I think sometimes when we watch everything on social media, we think that, oh, because you watched it, the ins and outs of whatever that situation is. You don't. And being aware that you also have a lot to learn, and that there are those who came before you who know more. Be open to it. Be open to other opinions, um, and don't think that always that your way is the best way. I think in my early 20s, I think that's what was the thing. It's like, oh, like, well, it's my life. Like, don't tell me what to do. It's like, it is your life, but you don't know. Uh, People have been where you've been, so they already know the different kinds of outcomes. So, don't be stubborn, be open, and make decisions that make the best decisions that you won't regret in the future. Yeah, think of your future self. What would your future self thank you for? That's a good way to make decisions.
Those are really great pieces of advice, and I think it transitions as well into our Christian value takeaway. Because for us, especially as Christians, we have all of these influences that can help guide us in making these decisions in our lives. But the most important guidance that we can get, of course, is from our Almighty God. And so, for our Christian values takeaway, shifting into adulthood can feel like navigating uncharted territory, but it's not something we're meant to do alone. From childhood to our teenage years and well into adulthood, there is one constant that not only remains with us, but also deepens and strengthens over time, which is our faith. Through every season of life, amid the changes and challenges we might encounter, our Christian faith is our foundation, our guide, and also our source of strength. So, as we take on new responsibilities and pursue our ambitions, let's remember that our spiritual growth is far more important than anything else in this life. When we rely on our Almighty God, we're better equipped to face life's uncertainties, make Christian decisions, and also find peace amidst the pressures of adulthood. I want to thank you again for joining us today, Sister Kathleen. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. And I definitely have so much more advice that I can take and implement into my adult life, even though I'm only 2 years in. Um, but before we close off this episode, I just wanted to ask if you have any shout outs or any greetings that you'd like to give before we end the
Oh,
episode.
yeah. I'd like to shout out my parents, Gigi and Dante Fajardo, there in a local congregation of Bayonne. And also shout out to my loving husband, Philip de Guzman, who's somewhere nearby, for always supporting me. And also shout out to INCRadio New Jersey crew, multimedia, and the entire district of New Jersey.
As always, we would love to hear from all of you, so please reach out to us for any comments, questions, or suggestions through our email at podcast@incradio.net. Because here on INC Radio Podcast, we're
We're here
here to
to hear.
hear. Bye, everybody. Thank you all for tuning into our episode today.
Let's open our devices and listen now. Let's have some fun, and this is how.